Okay, so Abner, have you happened to have any amazing RCS, rich communication service messages from anyone over on the iOS side of things this last couple of days?
So on the iOS side of things, I'm fortunate that my best dear friend is an Android user, is a Pixel user by my trade, by my work, many years of work. So I've already been experiencing the RCS side of things for a few years in that regard. So I've had some SMS chats that got converted to RCS. That's something. From earlier in the summer. But yeah, I don't know. Have to say I'm more of a text-heavy person, so the upgrades I appreciate have been the read messages and the status indicators.
Mm-hmm.
I'm somewhat surprised that people are keeping on the read receipts, because I know I turned them off a bit on other platforms, like iMessage. But yeah, that's the upgrade I appreciate, the read receipts and typing indicators, especially the typing indicators.
It feels like, it always feels like this when Apple adopts something, because they kind of drag their heels with, specifically with this, if I can even say it. It feels like a brave new world for messaging, right? It feels like a brave new world in that
a brave new world for conventional messaging.
Yeah.
Because RCS is still, well, anything that replaces SMS and MMS is still the conventional one in the grand scheme.
Yeah, it feels as though Apple has finally joined the party, and at least if you do receive a conventional text message, like you said before, that you're not going to be missing out on certain functionality that is almost in a lot of ways deemed. It's not even 2024 standards, is it? It's like 2011 standards. Read receipts have been around for a long time. Typing indicators have been around for a long time. It feels like
people are just familiar with it. It's not nothing new to people if they've used any modern web-based messaging service.
I mean, I'm very intrigued to see what happens in terms of like the actual adoption of this, because I'm seeing a lot of fallout on social media that there's a lot of people who haven't enabled it straight away because they haven't updated to iOS 18, and it seems weird that people would drag their heels doing that when people always go on about how good the iOS update system is, and you can get day one updates with your device for like however many years. And just seeing people talking about it online is really, really interesting. But I'm very, very pleased that specifically for a lot of people, particularly in the North America, that is, who tend to use the default messaging application, the biggest thing I think is going to be the improvement of sharing those memories. And if you have a Pixel or, predominantly any modern smartphone takes pretty good photos, you're going to be able to send those high resolution memories to people, especially like family group chats and stuff. I'm sadly, over here in the UK, my carrier doesn't actually support RCS messaging straight away. So I have ordered a SIM card for the EE network, which is one of the few that support it. So I'm going to try and speak to some people that I know that do use iOS, maybe message myself a few times. It's going to make, at least from my perspective, it's going to make getting things from my Android phone to my Mac a little bit easier, because I can message through a different system and then kind of like go the roundabout way to getting high resolution images back on my Mac for video purposes. But yeah,
as you're alluding to the carrier situation, so Apple has to activate. Well, the carriers have to do some work to support RCS, but after that, it's up to Apple to approve to make the final push in terms of activating it for its iPhone users. So that hasn't been the case. Well, in the US, the big carriers have it enabled, but there's some MVNOs or smaller carriers in general that haven't have it yet, and the situation abroad is a bit different too. So Google famously took over RCS on Android when the carriers were taking too long to roll it out. They provided their own server, and then everybody else eventually fell in line. So I don't begrudge Apple for not being a universal rollout. in regards to carrier by carrier. So I don't begrudge them that. I think they have some, as long as it's sooner than later, if it's, I don't know, by the end of the year, say, it's pretty universal. I think that's fine in terms of how long they have to roll it out. But yeah, it's not universal on day one. The biggest, I assume the biggest markets have been taken care of, but it's not universal.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Apple, obviously, it's not really within their interest to push it as much as Google would have liked them to. I mean, it was interesting to see Google's response to that when they pushed that getting the message video follow up. I thought that was quite funny. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of just seeing how people fall on both sides of the camp. It's going to be really. I'm really interested to see what happens once the iPhone 16 series comes out, and obviously a lot of people will be upgrading and stuff. And it'll just make that process of switching between the two ecosystems a little bit easier, I guess, because you know that you're going to have some sort of parity when you're messaging people.
Higher baseline of quality.
Yeah. I mean, the downside is now is I don't know, which I'm going to delve into in the next few weeks, is the limitations and the pitfalls of using RCS messaging across the barriers, because Google it kind of puts into perspective from what I can see already is how good Google Messages is as a client. I actually think
it's a solid client.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think a lot of the functionality of it's great. And if I'm going to make a controversial statement, I actually think Google Messages is better than iMessage because you're not relying on all of these tacked on extras that don't really add a great deal to the messaging experience. Because
iMessage has a lot of stuff, because I still don't get the concept of iMessage apps, of third-party experiences that you can quickly access. I still don't get that conceptually.
I think it's weird. This feels like there's so much. It's going to sound another ridiculous statement. I think there's a lot of bloat in iMessage as a result of that. Like, it's been around for a long time. Apple hasn't culled a lot of the things that have kind of really bogging it down and making it this big weighty application. I think maybe we could, just going sideways a little bit, I think Google Messages could learn a little bit from the way that iMessage is implemented in terms of like that cross-device accessibility, being able to have obviously forward text messages and stuff, because I do think that the current experience is a little bit lacking.
Let's talk about that. So the Google Messages model for getting your accessing your text on the computer is going to messages.google.com/web. They replace the QR code process with the Google sign-in. In that you press something on you confirm that you're the one who wants to sign in on your phone. You can still access the QR code, but basically it's not a centralized model. Your phone is still at the center. It's basically a server. Your phone is a server for the Messages web client, and it has some downsides in terms of reliability versus a centralized cloud model. It's maybe unavoidable, but the experience isn't the greatest.
Well, I found that like switching between my Windows gaming PC and my Mac for work purposes is like the transition, like you said, using your Google account. I thought that would have been excellent and completely seamless, and it's made it even worse, if anything. So I always revert to QR code scanning, and I'm sure it's fine. It's pretty good in terms of like it's quick, it's simple, and everybody knows what to do with the QR code. I'm guessing WhatsApp is the world's biggest messaging platform, apart from Facebook Messenger. So if they're doing it, then I guess Google can continue to do it, and it makes sense. But yeah, I kind of would have liked to see something a bit like Apple's implementation. I do wonder if the recent desktop mode / multi-window mode that we've seen in Android 15 QPR. Is it QPR 1 beta 2? Whatever they call them.
Beta 1,
yeah. Whatever
1 beta 2.
Yeah, whatever they call it.
Very weird.
Yeah, I think I wonder if that's going to be kind of shoehorned in there somewhere, where we can have like a desktop mode that allows you to have access to multiple things. I'm thinking big picture, but at the same time, it's really difficult to see what Google wants to do with it. But in terms of like the way that the two sides of the coin approach with RCS messaging, it's fascinating to see just how Apple users will respond to this over time. Obviously, currently we're only a few days after iOS 18's release. Like, I'm really wondering how they will respond to this, because I do think sometimes there's a little bit of a. I mean, guessing social media is not always the best place to gauge this, but it feels very much like when Apple users get something that benefits the opposite side of the fence, the Android side of the fence, there's a little bit of pushback from iOS. Like, they want to be perceived to be special, and this is one of the few times where. You could argue with foldables as well. Like, Android is leading the way in terms of like messaging protocols, and Apple has been dragging their heels with it. And iMessage is not necessarily the amazing function, the amazing killer application that it once was. So this could be the first. I'm gonna put my cards on the table. I think this is the first sign that iMessage is potentially losing its tightened grip on North America. I'm going to say it. If I'm wrong, so be it.
At the end, I think you've tapped into something interesting there. At the end of the day, messaging should be boring in terms of it's such a basic day-to-day life functionality that it really shouldn't have. I don't know. Messaging should be basic. There shouldn't be any controversy to it. And I kind of think that with iOS, now that iOS has RCS, the RCS protocol, the GSMA standards body will continue to release new features. We're waiting for stuff like end-to-end encryption, better replies, that kind of stuff. There will be some user-facing features, but at the same time, the thing with text messages and MMS for so long has been able to stay the same that there's no like people don't have to think about it. While I do think that people appreciate new features, like when Google Messages start converting emoji replies to make it inline, that kind of stuff, that's greatly appreciated by people. At the same time, I think there's something to the people that like SMS or that don't have to think about it, and that's North American basically. I think they've liked the aspect of it that it's just, we don't have to think about it. It just stays the same. It's way more consistent in terms of not changing for better or worse.
Yeah, it's. I do agree with you to a fair extent. I think that in terms of like messaging should be pretty like vanilla, but at the same time, I do think we've reached a point now where I think my first experience of this was coming from regular SMS messaging on a dumb phone to things like MSN Messenger. Now I'm definitely showing my age. MSN Messenger, where you had typing indicators, like you could put statuses, and obviously that kind of internet messaging protocol kind of way of doing things. I think that needs to be integrated more into standard smartphone messaging systems. Yeah. And it feels ridiculous that we've reached this point now where one of the biggest players in the game has kind of done their own thing and not kind of kept it separate. I mean, it's a benefit. I think it's a net benefit for everyone. I do hope that it means that now when I message people, I don't necessarily need to worry, I can use this messaging system or this messaging system. There's going to be at least a level of consistency across the board. And I suppose that is the biggest and best thing about Apple finally getting the message, #getting the message. And it's going to be, I do hope that a lot of the carriers, especially here in Europe, I know that most of us are WhatsApp users anyway and use different systems. I do hope that the carriers can keep up, because it feels like the rollout has almost caught them blindsided. But then again, like you say, that the Apple holding the keys to the door of RCS messaging does slow things down a little bit. It's a very, very different approach, isn't it? How Google was like, well, we're going to take the bull by the horns and do this.
After a few years,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, again, we're seeing that with Google Fi. Like, are Google Fi users able to actually use RCS messaging yet, or they're still waiting on Apple enabling that?
Fi users and on iOS aren't able to use it yet.
So
yeah.
The network that you would expect to be supporting it straight away out the box is hey, it's Apple doing Apple things, I guess. So what? So in terms of like limitations, then we don't have any encryption though right now between us, between Android and iPhone. Is that something? Because again, I've been head down doing other projects. That's something that's going to be worked on in the next few months. Because I guess that was the biggest selling point, right?
the day after, there was a public comment from the GSMA standards body, and Google said it's working towards it, and Apple last year said they wanted this, so I'm pretty sure it's happening. We haven't had specifics yet, but in terms of what could be, but this one thing it could be, it's called an MLS protocol that Google announced, I think, last year. So that's what we're probably going to be used. Again, we don't know what Apple's positioning or whether they have their own thoughts on what standard to use. But I think it's going to happen eventually, and I don't think hopefully there's not going to be too much controversy there, in that that's the side that gets picked. So yeah, in terms of user-facing features, there's better reply consistency. The latest RCS standard universal profile also had something about being able to edit and delete messages, so that's going to be nice. We'll get there. It's nice that the momentum is absolutely here in terms of there's going to be a lot of change, but I am curious how, let's say a year from now, how big RCS updates rather, Google can roll out new features relatively quickly, but iOS will require system updates presumably, so it's going to be interesting to see how long between standard adoption and when something on iOS is actually going to roll out, given how Apple updates its OSs.
Yeah, I was genuinely about to ask you that. So obviously we see the universal profile evolve over time, and I mean, it needs to now. Hopefully this now means that we're going to start to see some real progression in terms of like what we're capable of in terms of RCS messaging in general. I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm going to answer it myself as well afterwards. Do you think Google is going to rush forward with these things and try and almost, I don't want to say bully because that's not the right word, like encourage Apple to adopt them a little bit like they have done with that Get the Message campaign? Because it definitely feels like there's going to be a front runner now, and then Apple is going to, they'll drag their heels, I guess. They'll drag their heels adding these new functionality, right?
I don't think so. I think at this point, Apple has nothing to gain by it. And I honestly don't think that them adding RCS is going to impact iMessage adoption in places where it's popular. I really don't. It's because the network effect is something entirely different from functionality or features. So yeah, I think the network effect of iMessage is probably going to remain the same. I am curious what the most cultural thing I'm curious about is whether like the green bubble stigma ends, or well, realistically it's going to stay around for a while because that's how stigmas work, obviously. But yeah, I'm curious how if that's going to meaningfully change in the culture.
I guess we're too far down the line now. How long has iMessage been available? Since 2011? So I think 13 years down the line. Yeah, it's
pretty entrenched. Like I said, I don't think the network effect is going to go away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already seeing people on social media. I mean, I'm guessing it's trolling and baiting people, already disabling RCS messaging to begin with. So I just feel like, why would you? I mean, I don't know if you have this. Don't you have this
meaningful thing?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you have this idiom in the US, but it's cutting your nose off to spite your face a little bit. So it's like, why would you do that? Negative. Why would you negatively affect your own experience, especially if? It's interesting. I think it's kind of funny that now we're probably going to have a lot of mid-range Android smartphones now having like almost messaging, not quite parity, but you're going to be able to send high-resolution images, and maybe there will be a perception change of what Android phones are capable of to iOS users.
It'll take a while. I think that's what we know is going to happen. It takes a while for that to ever change.
Yeah. But yeah, that's RCS is a big deal, right? It's a big deal. There's millions of people out there already using messaging platforms and messaging services, and now, as of this week, it looks like the tide's going to change, and we're going to have just kind of better texting between Android and iOS. It's going to start improving. It's going to be a slow slog, I guess, and we're probably going to see a slow rollout from MVMOs like I use and people use in the US. But finally we can applaud Apple for doing something good in terms of messaging and not gatekeeping and having that lock-in system. It's an interesting time, specifically for us here in the Google messaging space, something I've been trying to use a little bit more. But we've had some other news, though, in terms of our other related news that's bigger for us. There was the Android 15 QPR beta, which gave us a little bit of a glimpse of what's coming in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So that's the big thing there.
Let's go over that a bit, because this is the next jump. So this is the one that's coming after
in December.
Yes, it's coming December. And
so the thing the tablet mode, the desktop windowing mode. Have you had a chance to use it?
I've been using it on and off, and I don't know if it's one of the best things that Google's done in the last few years in terms of Android updates, or if it's also one of the most confusing things they've done in the most recent updates.
So desktop windowing, this is something we've been expecting for quite a bit. It's been in development for so long, and now with a beta 2 last week, Google released on the Pixel tablet. It's not on the Fold. If you enable freeform, you get the old experience on the Fold, which is unfortunate, but makes sense since the difference between the Pixel tablet and the Fold is pretty significant. It works. Conceptually, everything is obvious, I think, in terms of there's basically like a second smaller gesture bar at the top of your screen that you can drag around and you can press, and it's okay. I think conceptually it's fine. There's still some, in terms of polish bugs, there's still, it's not smooth. There's still the edges of the windows still look weird when you drag them. What do you think of freeform windowing?
Well, as I said, I was a little bit confused by it, because it feels like this is, like you say, one of the things that's been in development for so long that I just thought it hit development hell and it's only going to stay as a developer option. And Google would just allow Samsung, Oppo, Xiaomi, everybody else to just kind of, they do what they want to do.
Better modes.
Yeah, because I do think the way Samsung handled it is pretty darn good. And I can't remember if I've tried it on a OnePlus phone, but I definitely tried it on a Xiaomi device, and that was also very good. This is one of the strangest modes I've ever used on an Android tablet, because this feels almost the most Chromebook that an Android tablet's ever felt to me. It feels like a step in that direction. And as soon as I paired a mouse and keyboard, it made a lot of sense. It made me confused as to why I would not use the Pixel tablet more, especially for productivity things, because I do think the Pixel tablet almost felt like it's been set up to be an entertainment device and that Nest Hub replacement, right?
Yes.
So I've never really wanted to use an Android tablet for productivity things, but just the ability to, which I don't know if people are aware of this, but with this new desktop mode experience, you can actually split out individual Chrome tabs. So you can have multiple Chrome tabs open within the same window, which on Android is actually not possible. You have to use two separate browsers side by side in split screen to get that to work correctly.
No.
Can you do that on?
You've been able. Well, on tablets.
On tablets.
Not on phones.
Yes, not on phones. Yeah. So on tablets, this feels like the right decision. And as soon as you introduce that mouse cursor and the keyboard into it, it really does something to the experience. And especially as the Pixel tablet is doing this first and foremost, that you can use Alt-Tab. Alt-Tabs already existed on tablets with keyboards, but it just feels like this is setting itself up for something a lot bigger further down the line. And I don't know how I feel about it right now, because I'm not a big Chromebook user.
On the Pixel tablet.
Yeah.
I have been trying to use it. I don't like mice because I think they're inefficient and you have to move them way too much. I'm a big trackpad user and I don't have a Bluetooth trackpad handy. But that aside, so I've been trying to use it most. And the Bluetooth keyboard I do have for spares is a Bluetooth ergonomic keyboard that's wide as heck. That's a long story somewhere. So I've been trying to use it mostly touch only on the Pixel tablet, and it's it's so the developer option for this is called freeform, and I think that's the most fitting way to describe it. It's the previous you obviously had split screen for a few years, and also on phones, and I don't know. I think split screen before this freeform, there's a limitations to it. The fact that it's strictly two windows, that it's two windows of equal size, there's something very limiting in a good way about that, in terms of you don't really want to manage windows on desktop with touch. You don't want to use your finger as the primary input method when you're managing windows on a, what is it, 11-inch screen? That
I think it's
honestly
it
isn't that big. Your finger isn't that, compared to a cursor, it's not that robust. So I think having two screens side by side is the maximum here, and it is still in this new freeform future. It's still that mostly, but I don't know. I'm still getting, it's week on. I'm still getting used to it in terms of finding when to window, because besides the browsing example which you mentioned, which you could do roughly with the Windows feature in Chrome, I don't know what other Android apps I use daily, what I want split versus just enjoying the full screen experience.
I've done it with the Files Manager, Google Files. I thought that was kind of useful because I can just quickly refer to it. I think when I saw the Windows option, like the Windows stacked and you can have them up, I've been trying to break the limits of it. It looks like you can only have four. It looks like you can only have four currently, like in view windows. I don't know if that's a RAM limitation or just a limitation of this particular this version of multitasking. Like the screen size does limit what you can have open as well, and some of the apps don't scale correctly. But I think having something like a YouTube video in the background is kind of cool. So you can scroll through and pick videos, have music playing. That's what I did to begin with. I tried to write something the other day. Wasn't quite the experience that I wanted it to be. It feels really weird, just like you say. I think that's why I paired a mouse and keyboard straight away, because it feels as though it's just not set up for touch. Touch is not intuitive in this because you're trying to resize things, pinch and zoom. And this window paradigm, it only works in a traditional kind of PC format, I think. Maybe I'm showing my age again. I do this every episode, show how old I am. It just feels like, there's some little things that irk me about it. Like trying to resize a window is really difficult because you end up closing the window accidentally or activating split screen by accident. There's another thing that I do, which is frustrating. You can get around this by casting your display to. I've done this with my TV. Like you can cast the screen to a bigger display, and that does help things a little bit because you can see things a little bit clearly. You're not kind of having to squint at it. If you could do display out and do this and potentially have one screen big, like a video, for instance, running on the tablet or the video running on the big external screen, like you potentially can do with other devices, I think that would be exceptional. And it does feel like maybe introducing this now, because later down the line we might see a Pixel Tablet 2 that has the power to run more windows and do things a little bit better. I don't know. That's me just picking an idea out of thin air, but I wonder what you think in terms of like, is this potentially it's staying behind a developer option, but is this eventually going to come into the stable version and we're going to have a dedicated tablet?
I absolutely
productive tablet.
think it's going to come. So the thing I've kind of been finding interesting is like having 3 phone-sized windows side by side. That's something you weren't able to do before, and I think everybody is mostly fine with phone-sized windows on screen. So that's what I've been playing around with. I'm still, I think the sea change that at least I need to make is the idea of weaving windows open in the background, of leaving apps open in the background, because I don't know, like how I use my desktop is if I'm not using it, I close it. That kind of thing. Same with tabs. So maybe that's the thing I need to get away from, in terms of just like, if I'm not actively using a window, just leave it there and continue to use the ones I am. Maybe that's the sea change I need to make. But it's again, to the thing you added, maybe it's because this Pixel tablet is so media focused that, I mean, the screen is wide, so maybe that's ideal for split screen. That's always been ideal for split screening, but I'm not sure if like you said, if the keyboard and mouse is a trackpad is the thing we've been missing in terms of a dedicated accessory for a Pixel tablet that's built around having those two accessories. Maybe that's the thing we're missing, but I'm still trying to find the utility of it when it's just a pure touch device.
Yeah, it feels like this is... It's clearly obviously it's clearly a test, and the Pixel tablet felt... I'm guessing Google have like, well, we only have one tablet, we'll put it on this one. It would be amazing if you could, like I say, if this ever comes to stable, which I'm guessing it is. I think Google made a big deal out of this, right, with a dedicated section in their blog post, and they wouldn't ordinarily do that if it was something that wasn't going to come to stable eventually. So that's my read on it anyway, or my take on it. I just think that this could be the kind of sea shift for the Pixel tablet, because the Pixel tablets feel really, it's quite a passive product. That's how I see it. It's very passive in that you don't necessarily use it every day. There's no reason for you to go and grab it all of the time, because you have your phone and it's like a side thing. And I know that with iOS and iPadOS, sorry, they've tried to make it more of a productivity tool. And I wonder if this is like that first steps into potentially maybe putting it to the consciousness of the people who would do this, like your real true productivity nerds who are going to install the beta releases, who are going to try this out for themselves, who are going to pair it with a mouse and keyboard and test things to its nth degree. And there's some little things that I think are really fascinating as well when you start to look at it, like even just the Windows style. The Windows style is something that's common that you'd experience on a desktop. Like you have the little X icon to close an application from this particular view. The top left will have the app icon and a little drop down where you can into those.
Yeah, it's touch friendly enough. It is touch friendly enough. They thought about it, obviously.
You mentioned you tried 3 windows side by side. That didn't even cross my mind. I went to the traditional kind of rectangular shapes and having it like that, and I feel maybe I need to try that. But at the same time, Google should probably offer the when you select the windows, you can kind of tile them that way, because that would take advantage of the bigger screen, right? Yeah, I mean, we had evidence of that stylus as well at some point, which never materialized by the looks of it. So I would want to know if that ever fits into the entirety of this desktop mode.
Let's touch on the stylus for a hot minute. I don't know where Google puts a stylus on the Pixel tablet, and the biggest limitation of adoption to that, of a stylus adoption, is being always having it with you. I think Apple has the best in terms of it's on the top. You can carry it without hitting it. You can put your tablet down without necessarily hitting it, say compared to the Galaxy S, the recent Galaxy S tablets, where it's behind on the camera visor. Like you can't really put it down without it hitting. So I think the best position is on a rail, and I think that probably speaks to the Pixel tablet getting a new design that makes it look like the phones, basically. A hypothetical Pixel tablet 2.
I'm guessing we'll never know until we find it out. I do hope this comes. I do hope this gets iterated over, and maybe by Android 16 we might finally have something that resembles a true productivity desktop mode, or DeX. If Google just said, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to make DeX. If it's just limited to tablets, that's fair enough. But at the same time, take some of that expertise in Chrome OS and apply it here. And people may choose the Pixel tablet over, or if there is a next generation Pixel tablet over a Chromebook, because A, you're buying a first party product, B, it's more portable in a lot of ways. C, it has that dual purpose potentially of an entertainment device more so than a, in air quotes, laptop. And you're not necessarily dealing with underpowered CPUs that can't do graphical stuff, they can't do AI stuff. So yeah, I feel like this could be a win-win if it develops into something that is truly shipped and part of Android wholesale. Whether or not it comes to foldables, I'd like to see it on foldables, but I guess the jury's out there as well.
I somewhat wonder if why freeform, why it's finally happening is because Google is acquiescing to Samsung in terms of giving them like that, making DeX part of making it easier to iterate on DeX. I wonder if that's the reason why this is happening, and because it's the Chrome OS thing in terms of, I think Chrome. I don't think anybody can really argue that Chrome OS is has the more mature desktop windowing experience. There have been Chrome OS tablets which have gone nowhere, because maybe the focus shifted back to Android tablets after a whole back and forth thing or whatever. But the windowing, so what Android, if they are really serious about desktop windowing, needs a desktop class Chrome browser in the way that what Apple did with the latest iPad OS updates a few years back. It needs a full browser, and the Chrome one isn't there yet, to me anyways.
I wonder though if that is an actual choice, because obviously, whereas you don't have a, in air quotes, desktop class Chrome browser, you have a competent browser that can do. Maybe you could just change the user agent of it so that it's treated like desktop. But then the class of the suite of Android applications, and Google is trying to pushing a bit more down the Android application route, that you have that wealth of functionality, added functionality that you would never get from Chrome OS, because there are dedicated applications that do dedicated things, and it's doing that without having to give up the flexibility of being a tablet. Does that make sense? That's kind of my read.
Yeah, no, and again, like the important thing, because those aforementioned tablet apps you're talking about, they are way more optimized than the web version for touch interaction, where especially with your finger, it slightly changes is when you have a cursor, but you're absolutely correct in that those Android apps that Google has been pushing developers to optimize for large screens, they will always be better than the web.
Yeah. I like it so far. I've been kind of blindsided by it. We were kind of a little bit blindsided by the QPR update in general, right? We didn't expect so many things to come to it, and there was a lot of stuff to delve into. Go check out my video, deep dive into that. But it kind of leads us into another thing that happened this week that has been really interesting. Is
just one more thing before Jet,
sure.
Just before that. Have you been using lock screen widgets on Android tablets?
I've set them up, but I'm
not crazy about it.
Yeah, I don't think it works particularly well, considering this is not an AMOLED screen, so you can't have them appearing without having that swipe, which I think is a little bit weird. I think it would be better if you could
and
integrate them better.
I prefer to use hub mode too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the... This is the problem. My problem with the Pixel tablet. I need to find the charging dock for cheap, because I'm not paying £150 for a charge dock. So I just use this. This is why this one's blindsided me a little bit, because it feels like, okay, this is not targeted at people who use their Pixel tablet as a hub. But yeah, we have a lot to delve into in terms of like stuff that's coming from that, and it kind of is a little bit strange because we're seeing that tease of functionality coming with the December update, but it looks like we finally have a release date potentially for...
Yeah, it's officially, we know it's coming in October, and yeah, it's pretty late, honestly, but I guess it is what it is at this point. It's I mean, again, as we said in the past, Android 15 is not the biggest updates. Pixel 9 owners have gotten features backported, so it's privacy space is basically the thing you're waiting for. But yeah, but timing wise, it's so weird in terms of Android 15 comes in October, and then by December you have a big update. You have a really big update around, especially if all the tablet stuff goes live then and there. Yeah, it's lock screen widgets. That speaks to why you need a second Pixel tablet, a Pixel Tablet 2 or a Pixel Tablet Pro, in terms of just having it's an always-on display is something I've always wanted on the tablets, but nobody's really delivering it. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, the last time I had that was with a Lenovo tablet, and they make tablets that are very, very niche. So I think we've had a lot of stuff to delve into over the last couple of weeks. It's been a big few weeks for Google and for Apple as a result of that, and vice versa. We have some cool stuff to talk about as well in the coming months with the result of Android 15 arriving. Hopefully this one's going to continue to improve with the beta updates. We're going to see even more features, and December could be a huge month for everyone in terms of Pixel in general. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to chat about before we shoot away.
Just to, I guess, wrap things up, Gemini Live is the free version is rolling out to more people. Have you been using Gemini Live with the Pixel 9?
Do you know what? I actually have. I think being able to ask contextual questions and get some sort of response for things that I know are kind of safe subjects, like historical things, like, I don't know, why is the Eiffel Tower that particular shape? Stuff like that is kind of always pretty useful. Or getting dates and stuff. Why is it daylight savings time? Why does that exist? All that kind of stuff's really, really useful. And I'm kind of glad that people who are going to have access to some of that through the free tier. I do hope that this evolves over time, because Gemini Live feels a bit siloed in the Gemini app. I'd like to see it a bit more like active, and I guess we're going to get that with the Pixel Buds Pro 2 in the next couple of weeks when they are officially available to purchase.
Yeah, it's Gemini Live. I really wish they launched extension support at this point, because it's right now it's just talking to Google. It's having a verbal Google, and that's what it is. But the extensions thing would really make it, being able to interact with your stuff would be, in this new mode, would be much better.
I do like the fact that you can do the interruptions and stuff, and it doesn't like break it. I think that's really interesting to use and to ask questions and then to get follow-ups. And I do think it's quite good how Gemini Live is a little bit proactive with stuff, so it'll prompt you if you want to learn more about a particular subject. Obviously, what voice option are you using currently?
Ursa.
Let me check which one I'm using. I think I'm using the lady with a British accent. And I don't know what that one is called without checking. I need to check that settings now. But yeah, I think Gemini Live is pretty cool. Like, maybe we'll see huge adoption of that.
People are interested in it. That's the thing. That's, I guess, like the secondary observation is that people want to use it. It's the interest now that it's free has been, people really want to use it. And I find it interesting from a cultural perspective. The idea of talking to, this is a way better than Google Assistant in how it's conversational it is. But again, like, my mental block still remains the idea that you're talking to something that isn't real, and it's much faster to read Wikipedia.
In some cases, 100%. Yeah, I think it's really good because here's for anyone out there in the UK or who's a big football/soccer fan, or any sports in general, actually, sometimes knowing where to watch something is really frustrating. So you can actually probably apply this to Netflix and anything. If you want to know where to find a show, ask Gemini Live, and it saves you the hassle of those horrible spammy websites that say, here's where to watch Manchester City versus Inter Milan.
That's a good tip. That's a hot tip.
That is my hot tip of the week, and I think that's probably the perfect place to end what is episode 25 of Pixelated. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking about the Pixel tablet desktop mode, and I just want to see how this develops over time. I'm really pleased. I'm also really pleased that the iPhone people out there, who I guess none of you out there listening are hardened iPhone users. If you are, please send us a message. I want to hear from you. You now have good messaging with Android users, but realistically, we know it's Android users having good messaging experiences with iOS. Maybe we should start a huge RCS group chat for everyone who listens to this podcast and send everyone messages.
Oh gosh,
that would be amazing. But yeah, I want to say thanks for joining me today, Abner. I know that we're
Likewise,
very, very
Dagan.
busy, very, very busy, and we have a lot of things to do as well. Always a good chat.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you next week, guys. Thank you.
Bye.